Hey scholars, how's it going? Um, all right, we're back again. We're moving on to chapter 11. When we were last here, what had happened? The highwaymen came, the burglars, and they had stolen their jackets and all their valuables from their luggage on top of the stagecoach, right? And they made them take their jackets off. They took those. Praiseworthy was pretty heroic, and we found out that Praiseworthy had a picture frame of Aunt Arabella, so that's interesting. And Cut Eye Higgins had the map in the lining of the jacket, which the highwaymen took away. So we'll see what's going to happen now. All right. Chapter 11 Jamocha Jack. The stagecoach climbed as if it were part mountain goat. It lurched, it halted, it buckled, it leaped, it clung. At times there was a sheer drop to one side of the trail. Far below, the pine trees looked to Jack like sharp green lances, waiting to skewer them if they slipped. He only looked once in a while. They were almost at the diggings, he told himself. He'd been telling himself that for days, but at last the stagecoach arrived, bringing a cloud of summer dust all the way from Sacramento City. "Hangtown, gents," the driver snapped with a final crack of his whip. "Looks mighty quiet today. Don't see nobody standing under a pine limb with his boots off the ground." A dog greeted them at the end of the street and barked them all the way up to the Empire Hotel. The passengers got out. There was road dust in Jack's eyebrows, in his ears, and down his neck. Now they had arrived. He had gold fever so bad that he didn't see how he could wait another 5 minutes to get his shovel in the ground. Hangtown. Everywhere he looked, there were men in jackboots and colored shirts. There wasn't a woman to be seen. The miners were coming and going, or standing and talking, or sitting and whittling. Blue freight wagons were being unloaded. Blindfolded mules were being loaded. The store shacks on both sides of the street were raised on wood pilings like short legs and looked as if they had just walked to town. Jack shouldered the shovel, and Praiseworthy shouldered the pick. On the roof of the stage, the driver was throwing down trunks and hand luggage. "What's the best hotel in town?" asked Praiseworthy. "The Empire," answered the driver. "What's the worst?" squinted Cut Eye Higgins. "The Empire." Praiseworthy glanced at Jack. "Unless I miss my guess, there's only one hotel in town. The Empire." It was exactly 1 hour and 5 minutes before Jack saw the diggings. First, Praiseworthy registered at the hotel. They washed. Immediately, Praiseworthy wrote a letter to Dr. Buckbee, advising him that Cut Eye Higgins was in Hangtown, but that the map had fallen into the hands of a gang of highwaymen. "Can we go now?" said Jack, fidgeting. He had polished his horn spoon so much he could see his nose in it. "Go where?" "The diggings!" "Oh, the diggings. We'll still be there after lunch, Master Jack." Praiseworthy's patience was a marvel and an exasperation. They had come more than 15,000 miles, and now they had to stop to eat. Jack didn't care if they passed up eating for a week, a month even. He wondered if he could ever grow up to be as easygoing as Praiseworthy. But once they sat down in the hotel restaurant, Jack discovered he was so hungry that he ordered bear steak. The only other item on the menu was a sow belly and beans, and Jack figured You had to be starving to order that. You and the boy want bread with your grub? Asked the waiter. He was a big fellow in floppy boots. Why not? Answered Praiseworthy. It's $1 a slice. The butler slowly arched an eyebrow. $2 with butter on it. Praiseworthy peered at Jack and then smiled. Hang the cost, sir. We're celebrating our arrival. Bread and butter, if you please. The bear steak was greasy and stringy, but something to write home about. Jack forced it down. After that, they left the restaurant. Praiseworthy bought a pair of buckskin pouches at the general merchandise store and emptied the gold dust out of his glove. The index finger was springing a leak. Jack liked the new leather smell of the pouch. He tucked it under his belt next to the horn spoon and was beginning to feel like a miner. Then, with tin washbins under his arms and the pick and shovel across their shoulders, they set out for the diggings. The day was hot and sweaty. When they reached running water, they saw miners crouched everywhere along the banks. They were washing gold out of the dirt in everything from wooden spoons to frying pans. Anybody digging here? Asked Praiseworthy when they came to a bare spot. Sure is, came the answer. That's Buffalo John's claim. The butler and the boy moved on upstream. Here and there were miners shoveling dirt into long wooden troughs set in running water to catch the flakes of gold. Anybody diggings here? Asked Praiseworthy. Yup, came the answer. That's Jimmy from town's claim. On and on they went, looking for a place to dig. They passed miners in blue shirts and red shirts and checked shirts and some in no shirts at all. Picks assaulted the earth and shovels flew. Weather tents were staked to the hillsides, and the smell of boiling coffee drifted through the air. After they had walked 1.5 miles, Jack began to think they would never find a patch of ground that wasn't spoken for. Suddenly, a pistol shot cracked the mountain air. Praiseworthy wash basin rang like a bell and leaped from his arm and went clattering away. You there? A voice from behind bellowed. Praiseworthy turned. His eyes narrowed slowly. Are you talking to me, sir? Talking and shooting. What are you doing with my washpan under your arm? Jack stared at the man. He had a thick, tangled beard, and his ears were bent over the weight of his slouch hat. Needless to say, you're mistaken, said Praiseworthy. Until this moment, I had the good fortune never to set eyes on you or your washpan, sir. We don't take kindly to thievery in these parts, growled the miner, stepping forward. A man steals around here, we lop off his ears. That's miner's law. Do you have any laws against shooting at strangers? Nope. Jack couldn't imagine Praiseworthy with his ears lopped off. He took a grip on the handle of the shovel as the miner came closer. His heart beat a little faster, and he waited for a signal from Praiseworthy. The miner belted his pistol and picked up the washpan. He crimped an eye and looked it over. It's mine, all right. You're either nearsighted or a scoundrel, said Praiseworthy. Jack was ready to fight, if not for their lives, at least for Praiseworthy's ears. Just then, a flash of tin in the sunlight from a pile of wet rocks caught Jack's eye. He dropped the shovel and went for it. Is this your pan? Jack said. The miner's bushy eyebrows shut up like birds taking wing. It is at that, ain't it? He laughed as if the joke were on him. I'd forget my boots if I didn't have 'em on. Praiseworthy peered at the man. Apparently shooting at strangers by mistake didn't amount to anything in the diggings. The miner hardly gave it another thought. How about a cup of Jamocha? Jamocha? Asked Praiseworthy. Coffee. I got a pot working just fine on the fire. Where are you strangers from? Pinch Pine. Billy Pierce. They call me, and I'd be rightly pleased if you did the same. Shucks, looks like I wore a hole plumb through your washpan. Good shooting, though, weren't it? Praiseworthy put his finger through the hole. The washpen was useless. Perfect shooting, sir. No hard feelings, said Pitchpine Billy. I could show you more ways to wash gold than skin a cat. Let's get the coffee. Put hair on the boy's chest. He your son? Jack looked up at Praiseworthy. My son, the butler started to explain, but the miner didn't leave a long enough pause. Mississippi McFinn has his 2 boys with him. I hear they just struck it rich over at Poverty Hill. And then there's the Peterman boy. He and his pa is trying their luck at Swell Head's diggins. What's your boy's name? Jack, you look powerful clean for a young'un. It don't seem natural somehow. While your ears shine like a newly minted gold pieces. Jack felt his face redden as he glanced at Praiseworthy. I'm not going to wash for a week, he thought, or a month, or maybe even until we get back to Boston. There was an air of hospitality about the miner that pleased Praiseworthy, and he forgave him the hole in his gold pan. Sir, a cup of coffee would taste just fine. Pinchpan Billy led them to the weathered canvas tent pitched along the slope. The coffee pot was boiling merrily. He filled 3 tin cans, black as paint, it looked to Jack. He had never tasted coffee in his life. Aunt Arabella would be furious. He looked at Praiseworthy, and Praiseworthy gave him a nod, as to make up for having Jack wash his ears at the hotel. The tin cans were so hot they felt as if they'd just been forged. Jack sat on a rock to let the brew cool. Although Praiseworthy's coat and bowler hat had fallen by the wayside, he clung to the black umbrella as the last badge of his calling. A butler, mused Pitchpine Billy. He drank his coffee, steam and all. You any relative to Hemp Butler over at Muletown? The name is Praiseworthy, not Butler, sir. The miner cripped an eye. You don't say. Well, he calls himself Butler Ol' Hemp, does. Never known his name was Praiseworthy, but I always figured him for a shifty type. How about 10-spot Butler over there at Poker Flat? He your folks? There seemed no point in trying to make himself clear, and Praiseworthy let it go. Tell me, Mr. Pierce, just call me Pitchpine Billy. How do we stake a claim? Easy. Find yourself a piece of real estate nobody's working, and pound 4 pegs in the corners. Put tin cans on them so folks can see. Rags'll do. And you've got yourself a legal claim. That's miner's law. As long as you work at it at least 1 day a month, it's yours. He laughed and stroked his beard. Of course, the other 30 days you just got to stand around shooting off squatters and claim jumpers. He refilled his can. Why, there are places along the river where the claims is only 4 foot square and the boys is digging out a fortune back to back. Jack finally picked up his tin can. The steam alone was like a dragon's breath. Now he was almost sorry Praiseworthy had given him a nod. At the first taste, the coffee bit his tongue. Drink up, Jack. Jamocha Jack, that's what I'll call you. A man ain't really accepted around here until he's won himself a nickname. Best coffee I ever tasted, Jack said hoarsely. Plenty more in the pot. I ground in a few acorns for flavor. Jack winced inwardly. Jamocha Jack. The name pleased him, but he wasn't sure he could win it. The coffee stung and burned and tasted poisonous. He forced down another mouthful. He was afraid the miner would take back the name if he didn't drain the can. He tried another swig, but it wouldn't go down. Praiseworthy, catching Jack's distress out of the corner of his eye, shifted his position. The tip of his umbrella jiggled Jack's elbow, and the tin can jumped. The coffee spilled. "It's no account," said Pitch Pine Billy. He lifted the pot and refilled Jack's can. "We don't stand on table manners out here." Jack gulped and stared at the fresh, steaming black potion of coffee. He had to begin all over. Praiseworthy gave him a compassionate glance. He considered it his duty to look after Jack, but now he had only made matters worse. "Let me show you how to wash your gold without water," Pitch Pine Billy was saying. "Take your horn spoon, boy, and scrape some dirt up from the crack in that rock. It places like the Spangles like to hide, if there is any." Jack was glad to set the coffee aside to cool. He slipped the horn spoon from his belt and turned eagerly to the crack in the rocks. "Just a handful, boy." Jack scraped away, gathering up river at sands and bits of dead pine needles. The horn spoon worked fine. It got in the cracks. He filled the miner's outstretched hand and sat on his heels to watch. "This is the trick the Sonorans use," said Pitch Pine Billy. "They come from Sonora down Mexico way. Water must be scarcer than gold around here. We call this dry washing." He poured the dirt in a small stream from fist to hand, like sand in an hourglass, while at the same time blowing on it. Sand and pine needles scattered under the force of his breath. He poured again, and each time the handful of dirt grew smaller. Grain for grain, gold is 8 times heavier than sand. If you blow just right, the spangles fall and the lighter stuff goes flying. Jack bent closer. Finally, Pitch Pine Billy had nothing left to blow. He held out the rough palm of his hand and laughed. "Boy, you struck it already. Look there." Resting in his hand were 2 gleaming pinheads of gold, but to Jack they looked as large as jewels. "Put 'em in your pouch, boy," said Pitch Pine Billy. "Easy. Don't knock over your coffee." "Thank you, sir," Jack smiled, whipping out his brand new buckskin pouch. "But they're yours." The miner grinned. "Anything that small, I throw back in. You and your pa can squat on my claim." "But Praiseworthy's not—" "There's more yeller underfoot than I can dig out. I'd be obliged if you clear some of it away. You got any idea how to work that tin pan of yours, boys?" Mr. Quartz Jackson. "You a friend of old Quartz? Why didn't you say so? Stay for dinner here. We'll have sow belly and beans, and I won't take no for an answer. Now, let's get our boots wet, and I'll learn you how to pan. Bring your coffee." Jack exclaimed a glance with Praiseworthy. "Sow belly and beans." "We'd be delighted to join you for dinner," Praiseworthy said, since Pitch Pine Billy had left them no choice. They moved to the edge of the stream. Jack took a swallow of coffee. The miner pulled a few weeds and threw them in a pan. Jack got down another mouthful of coffee. "Around running water," explained Pitch Pine Billy. "Gold has a way of getting tangled in the roots of weeds and grass." He dipped the water in the pan and washed the roots clean. He added more dirt until the wash basin was better than half full. Then he began to pan, using the same circular motion Quartz Jackson had showed them. "You get rid of the rocks and slickens little by little," Slickens, said Jack. Mud with gold worked out of it. Keep the pan working and dipping and working until the spangles reach the bottom. Fish out the rocks. See how I'm letting the slickens spill over the edge of the pan? It takes practice, boy. At first, you'll lose more color over the side than you'll save in the bottom. But you'll get the hang of it. Ain't you drinking your coffee, boy? Why, look here. We struck it again. Let me have your pouch. Jack took 2 hard swallows of coffee. Then he pulled off his shoes, rolled up his trousers, and tried his hand with the gold pan. The mountain water was icy, but he hardly noticed it at first. He hunted grass and weeds. 5 minutes later, he could no longer feel his feet. You're standing in melted snow off the high peaks, Pitch-Pan Billy chuckled. Wash out enough color and you can buy yourself some boots. Then he turned to Praiseworthy. You ain't exactly dressed for prospecting. Yourself. You and the boy will be needing a tent and a mountain canary. A mountain canary, Praiseworthy? Asked Praiseworthy. Bull or mule or burro. There's going one hee-haw-hawing now. Got a fine singing voice, don't he? What's that umbrella for? A matter of habit. Well, it ain't going to rain around here for some time, but seeing as I punctured your gold pan, I don't see any reason why an umbrella wouldn't work just as well. Let me show you. But Pitch-Pan Billy lifted off Praiseworthy's arm and opened his umbrella wide. He stuck it in the ground upside down. If you don't mind, sir, said Praiseworthy with a flash of impatience, I happen to treasure that. Yes, sir, the miner was saying to himself. It ought to work fine, just fine. Then he began shoveling dirt into the open umbrella. Praiseworthy watched with a kind of quiet horror. He carried that black umbrella for years, and now was being ruined before his eyes. Oh, thank you, sir. But by then, Pitch-Pine Billy had lifted the dirt-filled umbrella into the water and was dunking it. He began to twirl it by the handle. He dunked and twirled and dunked and twirled and dunked. Why, I've panned gold in a pocket handkerchief, said the miner. The dirt dissolves and washes through the leaves and leaves the spangles behind. Jack, meanwhile, was working the slickens out of his pan. He'd step out of the water to warm his feet and take a sip of coffee and then return. He worked 2 pans of dirt without finding a speck of color. But then he didn't have the hang of it. He was losing gold with the slickens, but he stayed with it and his feet turned blue. Finally, Pitch-Pine Billy was no longer plunging the umbrella, but working with a deft, gentle washing movement. He fingered out the rocks and after a moment returned the umbrella to Praiseworthy. Best gold pan along the river, he grinned. I might buy me one of these myself. The mud was gone. In its place along the black fabric of the umbrella lay a bright dusting of gold and spangles. Praiseworthy crimped an eye and smiled at the hospitable miner. I think I could get the hang of it, sir. He removed his shoes and rolled up his trousers and set to work. All through the afternoon, Jack could be seen panning and taking a sip of cold coffee, and Praiseworthy cut an elegant figure plunging into a muddy umbrella in the stream. Jack reached the bottom of the tin can, and that was that. Yes, sir, first-rate coffee, Pitch-Pine Billy, he said. First rate. Glad you liked it, answered the miner with a bushy-faced grin. Jamocha Jack. All right, learning how to mine. I'm starting to get a real feel for Praiseworthy and his character, and I could just imagine that he was pretty frustrated about his umbrella being used as a gold pan. But let's see what happens next. I'll see you guys for chapter 12.